Alison, North America, it's been the star performer for Irish tourism in recent years. And what's it looking like for 2025?
Well, I think, Owen, first of all, thanks for having me and thanks for having this conversation. I think we need to remember that we're coming off a really strong year last year in 2024. And if you look at North American performance, the 1.4 million trips, so it's up 10%. But more importantly, North American spend last year was up 19%,
Yeah,
2.2 billion. So we expect growth rates to moderate this year. In terms of how this year is looking, it's looking fairly robust. We just had the
great.
opportunity to connect with a lot of tour operators, the airlines, and even spoke to some of my European colleagues yesterday. So I think the business that is booked for the first half of the year through the summer is looking pretty robust. Obviously, there's a lot of macroeconomic uncertainty. You'd expect me to sort of comment on that this week. And obviously, uncertainty is not good for any of us. It's not good for business. It's
Yeah,
not good for the industry, and it's not good for consumers. So I think we have to obviously keep a very close eye on the impact that might potentially have on consumer behavior, consumer confidence, and spending patterns on discretionary items like travel and other things. We're a resilient industry. I think we can demonstrate our flexibility. I think what's going to be really important is we stay close to stakeholders, we stay close to our consumers. We make sure that our marketing is the very best that it can be. And this is, I
yeah,
think, at a time when you have a bit of uncertainty, marketing really matters. So making sure that we
yeah,
are really targeted and zero focus on who we're going after to win as much business as possible and make sure our dollars go as far as possible. So I say
yeah.
at the moment, there's headwinds out there. We will stay close to those, but I would be cautiously optimistic, that at this point in time. But again, I think it's too early to say, but what's in the bag is good right now.
Yeah, exactly. And it is a volatile time. There's no point pretending otherwise with stock markets and, also all sorts of uncertainty. But Ireland is still very highly thought of, isn't it, in the States? And just looking at, I suppose, splitting the US and Canada up for a little bit, just looking at the US in terms of your marketing plans and marketing activities. I know you had a launch of your plans just last month. How are you planning to target the American visitor this year?
Well, we have a very ambitious marketing program, and it's kind of really anchored around inspiring US travelers to obviously put Ireland on their consideration set. So we're targeting what we call an enriched explorer. So it's a very data-driven approach to our activity.
Yeah,
We launched our Fill Your Heart with Ireland campaign in February. It's running on television, also right across connected TV and other streaming platforms. And that will continue to run through the end of May, and then we'll have another sort of burst of television in and connected TV in June and July to promote the off season. So that's
yeah,
on the advertising side. So I mean, I suppose at the end of the day, our goal is to encourage people to see more, do more, enjoy more, and ultimately spend more. So we want people to get off that beaten track.
yeah,
As far as the B2B side is concerned, obviously the tour operator side of the house is very important here in the United States, big distribution channel. So we have a number of sales missions underway. We've had 2 this year. We have a second one kicking off next week. But we'll have worked with 35 partners across those sales missions. And that gives us an opportunity. For example, next week, we're going to Detroit, Indianapolis, Nashville, all 3 new gateways for us this year. So the air access
yeah,
is really strong, and finishing up in Charlotte. That's an opportunity for us to connect with travel advisors. We have a number of luxury platforms coming up later in the year, our luxury summit in Texas and Arizona. We're doing a lot of activity in Western US because we're seeing really good growth from those the Western states. So that's what we're doing on the trade side. And then, of course, we continue to have a really effective and powerful publicity machine. Big push,
yeah.
obviously, over St. Patrick's Day. We continue to work with tier 1 broadcast outlets to tell those great stories. And of course, we're also always looking to work in partnership with our airlines and our tour operator partners. So making sure that we have Ireland as front and center. So it's a multi-channel program. It's an ambitious program.
Yeah.
It's linked to inspiring visitors, but also strengthening those partnerships with trade in the market, but also with our Irish industry partners in Ireland, as well as our media partners, who are really critical to keeping Ireland front and center.
Yeah, it's multifaceted now, marketing, isn't it, Alison? When me and you were, probably having our first conversation 20 years ago, it was a kind of a trade show and a brochure and maybe one TV ad, but it's multifaceted now.
Absolutely, it's multi-channel. It really is about being data-driven. We're doing, obviously, we put a big emphasis on making sure we reach the right people at the right time with the right message. We're doing a lot of online video. We're running ads on online video platforms, on all of the social media platforms, and that digital campaign runs throughout the year. And then we have tentpole events throughout the year, like St. Patrick's Day, which is typically the start of the season, right the way through to Halloween, which obviously we're trying to promote Halloween as the island is the home of Halloween. The great news is I think it's going to become Halloween month, probably for October. So it's going to start to develop that. So leading into some of those tentpole moments across all of our marketing activity, trade, consumer, and publicity, and increasingly working with influencers as well to tell that story. We know when people are booking and planning their trips, they're heavily dependent on advocacy and and searching on online video sites and other activities. So really important for us to make sure we are as targeted and as efficient as possible.
Yeah, and I know you had Minister for Tourism Peter Burke on the West Coast, which was really encouraging. And Alison, we have some major sporting events, don't we, that will appeal to the American market this year?
We do. Obviously, the first one is the annual Aer Lingus College Football Classic. So this year we'll see Kansas State play Iowa State. Both Midwestern states, I think it's been billed as Farmageddon. So that's very exciting for us because as the slogan for this game says, much more than a game, it really does live up to that. And I think the two teams we have coming this year, for many of those people, Ireland would not have been on their radar screen if it had not been for the game. So the amount of incremental visitation that is generated from these games is really quite significant. So we expect around 24,000 visitors. And I suppose our role is to work with the organisers with all of these events to leverage the tourism potential. Recent announcement also with NFL coming to Dublin.
Yes.
Steelers. We don't know who their opponent is going to be. We don't know the exact date, but likely to be end of September, early October. Again, our expectation there is that we hope there'll be at least 10,000 Americans traveling over that. As NFL
and both those games, the college football game and the NFL game, they're broadcast very prominently stateside. So I presume there's loads of opportunity for Destination Ireland to sort of be showcased.
Absolutely. And I think when we look at the 2024 game, I mean, the viewing audience for last year's game was as big as it had ever been. It was 5 million viewers. So the economic impact, the viewing audience for Americans sitting at home, the eyeballs is significant. So we work very closely with the organisers, but also with the broadcasts to leverage the tourism potential. And I suppose I should also mention the Open Championship from a golfing perspective. Golfers spend more than the average leisure traveller. So the Open Championship returning to Royal Portrush is obviously a significant opportunity for the island of Ireland. And again, the eyes of the golfing world will be on the island of Ireland, on Northern Ireland. And the broadcast piece around that is really significant. And that will lead very nicely into 2027 when we look forward to hosting the Ryder Cup at Adare.
Yeah, that's going to be really exciting. You do a lot of research, don't you, in the States, Alison, particularly in the US, and in terms of the recent iteration of it, is there any new aspects to it that have jumped out? Are US people still positively disposed to Ireland? Do they look at us in a different way? Is there any things that we can learn there?
Yeah, I think our last sentiment research was at the end of last year. And I think a couple of things, or two or three things stand out for me. First of all, demand is strong. Travel intentions to visit the island of Ireland, interest in visiting Ireland is very strong. The second thing is that Americans certainly believe that Ireland offers good value for money. So that's a positive thing. Ease of access is always critical for people when they consider the destination.
And it's never been better on an access front, has it?
So we have 21 gateways servicing obviously Ireland this summer. That's really important. The other thing I think stood out for me was just around sustainability. And when asked the question, are you willing to pay a little bit more for sustainable travel experiences, 59% of Americans said they were. The global average is 50%. So I think we're on a journey there, as we know, and obviously the experience development work and the investment that is going into creating a lot of really unique and immersive experiences right around the island of Ireland is really impressive. So the experiences that Ireland can offer are definitely well aligned to what Americans are looking for. So those are a few things. I think the key thing is exploration is the key motivator for Americans when they travel. And when they travel, when they look at Ireland specifically, it's landscapes and scenery and heritage that are the key drivers. They want to have fun, and we are obviously an island that is very welcoming, and they also want to spend time with friends and family and quality time. And I think that's sort of a byproduct of COVID as well. So Ireland, stacks up very well in terms of satisfying those needs.
Great, and long may that continue. Just moving to Canada for a moment, so long it's sort of, I suppose, been in the shadow of its bigger brother, but Canada had a phenomenal year last year, didn't it? And this year there's even more potential and more opportunity, isn't there, from the Canadian market? So, it's up to all of us to really maximize that.
Absolutely. And we look at Canada, if you just take the access position, as a starting point, I mean, there's 11% more air access coming out of Canada this year. Obviously, about 70% of that access is coming out of Toronto, but you have 5 gateways with Vancouver, Calgary, Toronto, Montreal, and you're going to see WestJet bringing their St. John's service back this year.
Great.
So that's exciting. With the Canadian market, if we look at the profile, the average length of stay is actually longer than Americans. So
Yeah.
they stay on average 10 days. They're probably slightly more independent in terms of their travel behavior. They're a little bit more seasonal, but certainly the Q4 is growing very nicely, and they really do want to get off the beaten track. So Tourism Island, we're investing more in the Canadian market this year than we ever have done before, which has allowed us to, really expand our consumer marketing efforts. We were on television for the first time, both obviously what I call the linear old-fashioned TV, but really on across connected and digital streaming platforms to really scale up our opportunity, particularly in Ontario, which is where the bulk of the business is coming from. So it's a good market for us. The gregarious travelers, and Canada is also a very important market for Northern Ireland. So when we talk about people getting off the beaten track, it's the number 3 market for Northern Ireland. So we're very encouraged by what we're seeing there. And I think this year, we're cautiously optimistic it'll be another good year. Again, caveat, we'll obviously have to monitor some of the external economic factors.
Yeah. You've got an enormous footprint there from the US right through to Canada. So thanks for all the hard work up by you and the team, Alison, and keep those Americans and those Canadians coming across the Atlantic to the Emerald Isle. And we appreciate all the work you've done. Thank you.
Thank you, Owen.